Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak Live on Dominion Television. It's Wednesday, the 11th of March 2026, and we're glad you're starting the day with us. I'm Manulu Akpo Ido.
And I'm Oluwayemi Adelako. Thank you for joining us as we take you through the major stories shaping conversations across the country this morning.
We begin with political drama from Rivers State, where the Speaker of the House of Assembly, State Assembly in Rivers State, raised eyebrows during the screening of a commissioner nominee who reportedly declared, "I am a politician, I don't pay tax." The exchange has since sparked conversations about accountability, public service, and political responsibility.
Right after that, we bring you the weather report, followed by Daybreak News, where you get the latest development from across Nigeria and beyond.
After that, we'll take a look at the major stories making the front pages in today's newspapers during our newspaper headlines and analysis segment. Joining us for that discussion is Oluwole Oluwaseun, aviation instructor and public affairs analyst.
And later on the program, our big story examines the real drivers behind the rising cost of living in Nigeria. In a conversation titled Inflation, Greed or Policy Failure, the reality behind Nigeria's rise in prices. We'll be joined by Ignatius Zufino, Boselima, researcher and public affairs analyst.
And as always, we'll wrap up with Trend Watch, tracking conversations gaining traction across social spaces today.
Definitely. This is Daybreak Live on Dominion Television.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Anne.
How are you?
I'm very well done. All right. So what we are looking at this morning, of course, one of the nominees that was screened by the State House of Assembly of Rivers State, who declared that I'm a politician, I don't pay tax, and I'm speaking about this particular woman, Mrs. Charity Dima, who was not confirmed. So I think about 9 names were sent to the House of Assembly, and according to the Speaker, Martin Samaoli, and then 5 of them were confirmed, while 4 were not confirmed. I don't want to dwell so much on the 5 that were confirmed. I think our business this morning is to discuss the 4 that were not confirmed. So let's start with Mrs. Charity Dima, who was not confirmed. At that point, as a nominee, you want to fill a position, you're expected to declare your tax certificate, in the last 3 years. So she could not provide that. And of course, the Speaker asked her a question, is it that you've not been receiving salary? Have you ever worked before? She said, I'm a politician, I don't pay tax. And the Speaker asked her the question, are you saying politicians don't pay tax? Because if politicians don't pay tax, then we won't ask you to declare your tax certificate in the last 3 years. Because according to the Nigerian Constitution, whether you work for government or you don't work for government, whether you own a business or not, you're expected to pay tax. So, and then at some point, she now said, I used to work with the local government caretaker committee. And then the Speaker asked her, at what point was that? She said last year, 2025, and then she was there for 3 months. The Speaker then asked her the question again. So when you were with the local government committee, is it that you were not paid any salary? So she said, oh, I got the salary for 3 months. So is that not enough for you to actually pay your tax? So at that point, she wanted to say quite a number of things, but then the Speaker had to move on. So it speaks to the rot in the system, because if a politician can come out to say, I'm a politician, so I don't pay tax. So how are you supposed to talk to even the citizens to say you have to pay your tax? So moving on from her now, I would also like to talk about the other nominees that were screened and were not confirmed. Another person is this Esquire, this particular lawyer, who is Otonye TKD Amatre. It was not confirmed. And then according to the Speaker, he said while he was going through his CV, he wrote WAEC about 2 or 3 times. And then apart from that, he also said, he graduated with a 3rd class. And so he's not really sure if he can undo that position of Attorney General of the state. And then the man responded and said, maturity or age comes with maturity. He said, maturity comes with age, rather, I beg your pardon. And then he said, yes, he finished with a 3rd class. But then at some point when he was writing his bar exams, about 80 of them wrote the exam. And then it was part of the 25 that passed. So he's trying to say that, okay, yes, I've had it rough at the beginning of my career, but I'm doing so well now. But then he didn't. I don't think the Speaker was able to, see from that, perspective to say, okay, you still deserve this position. And then one more thing, the former chairman of Okrika, that's the 3rd man that was not confirmed. I also like to speak about him as well. I want to get his name now. His name is Stamuno Williams. He was asked to recite the second stanza of the national anthem, and he could not recite that. And then because of that, maybe and quite a number of other reasons, it was unable to be confirmed as well. So these 4 individuals were not confirmed, and according to the speaker, they were not confirmed based on forged document and of course questionable character. So some Nigerians are raising their eyebrows to say, why should you ask somebody to recite the second stanza of the national anthem? Because I mean, even if you ask most of the speakers, they might not be able to. Then, and that's very true. Even most of them might not be able to recite the second, even the first stanza. Some persons cannot recite it. So is that enough to disqualify somebody? I think it's something that we'll look at this morning. But away from that, I'm an advocate of excellence. I think the best brains should always occupy the position. But then I just want to speak quickly about that Esquire that was not confirmed. I don't know whether it's based on his qualification, but I think in recent times I've seen people who didn't graduate with such maybe a first class or a 2-2 or a 2-1, and they are doing so well. So it really doesn't matter. There's a particular GM in your state as we speak now. While he was in primary school, he was really dull, but now he's doing so well. He finished with a first class. He's written quite a number of books. So a rough beginning might really not determine how you do well in life. But then at the end of the day, I'm not a politician. I don't want to pay tax. I don't think it's something that should be accepted. See, Nigerians should not bring to the fore their biases when it comes to issues like this. It's the duty of the House of Assembly to determine those that will occupy certain positions. I mean, it's for the benefit of the nation at the end of the day. Right?
I guess you've made very valid points that should be buttressed, and I think maybe I will also start the conversation from my end to say everybody is ignorant, only in certain subjects. You see, a medical doctor who is traveling from Oyo State to Ondo State along a road in the middle of the night, his cab, got stuck, and then he could not move again. And then he was stuck there. He was messed up because there was nothing he felt he could do. And then he left the car looking out for a way to just escape, because you understand that particular place is not a place to stay. Not even in the day, to talk about nights, to stay all by yourself. And that was the issue. But you would ask the question that this person was learned or is learned. This person attended the university. Yes, he sat in class. In fact, for the first maybe 100 level, he started with a lot of persons that later became engineers, right? So the difference between himself and another person who is an engineer who probably will fix the car without even thinking or blinking is the kind of education they got, right? So everybody's ignorant, but only in certain subjects. A medical doctor might know everything about incision, making surgical operations, but might not know so much about a vehicle, which is okay. That's exactly where I'm coming from, to say we are all flawed. There's not one person that is perfect, but this is not to excuse ignorance, ignorance in that sense. Because I observed, I also saw the video and I was looking at the woman. I saw, I think one of the things that I'm going to first lay emphasis on is the confidence, the aura, the effrontery of some of our political office holders. And this is not just because it tells across board. If you look at the reflection of our leaders, there were certain leaders at some point who came out to show their wealth on social media. And you ask the question, how are these people really thinking? You can see it's a systemic error. The people they appoint, I'm not saying, of course, we all know they are not the best of all the people in the country, Nigeria. But of course, grace would help some people. But let the grace also speak with substance, with competence. These are not things, I mean, the second stanza, like you mentioned, might not be a thing that might be known by everybody, because we didn't recite it growing up. The ones we did in our schools, maybe
even the old ones, unless
some people still have problems with it, but that might not really be so much of a thing. But I want to talk about Mrs. Dimo particularly, and when she said she's a politician, the first thing that came to mind was, what do you mean? Because even Martins was asking the question. You said what? He wanted to be sure she said, I'm a politician. So what does that make you? If you call yourself a politician, what does it make? Does it mean you cannot pay? So I think the first thing is, this is first a systemic error. And it's not just about the woman in question or about the assembly. It's about the country, Nigeria. Before this tax policy, the reform policy by Taiwo Udele and this administration came about, do you know there were a lot of people that didn't even know about tax? They didn't know about maybe a tax certificate, for example. Some people even just pay tax when they go to buy stuff on, the VAT and all of those. They don't know if that was a tax. They don't know how much they earn, and maybe in a way, because we understand that we've enjoyed so many dividends in this country, especially not paying tax. Tax exemption has been a thing that is general, right? So people are just getting into the know about, oh yes, I should pay my tax. I'll get a certificate after the end of the year, or if I need it, I can always request for it, and a lot of things. So this is one, but again, if you don't know something, I guess it's easy to just say, you know what, I'm not so conversant with that line of context. I really do not have a broad understanding, but I think I pay tax or I don't pay tax. But if you say I'm a politician, I hold a public office, and that's the reason I should not pay taxes, is questionable. Because you understand, like you also mentioned, personal income tax is supposed to be paid by you. That's payee for whatsoever job you do, whatsoever field you are. Whether you're a politician or not, you must pay that. That's exactly one of the things that is your responsibility as a person, as an individual who earns in the country. If you earn in the country, Nigeria, for example, you should pay your payee, for example. Yeah, so that's even one. But on the flip side of things too, when Martins began to, grill her a bit, because it was another woman in the house, that raised the issue that she's seen some irregularities in the tax account of this person, and then she raised it, and then Martins went ahead to say, Madam, what's up? She asked at some point, he even used a very kind word to say, that is not very nice. He could have said something else, because that exactly wasn't nice. If you want to become a press commissioner nominee, commissioner is not a joke. If you want to be a commissioner you are going to represent not just the state, but also the people. The people you are representing professors, doctors. And I'm not saying that to demean every other person. I'm saying you are representing a crop of people who are intellectuals. So you want to represent them well. You want to be a good representation for these people. I don't want to have a leader who cannot stand up and speak well, who cannot stand up and defend what his administration or administration is doing. We want a leader that is credible, that is competent. That's exactly what Nigerians are. And I don't think that's too much to ask, because we've seen over and over again where we know there could be political instances where there are political intricacies into nominating, and then, the assembly or the Senate at this level are saying we don't want this person for some reason. But if it is for this kind of reasons, I'm afraid they should really go. The four of them that were, and also the one you mentioned, people can have a rough background. It's okay to have all of those things. But what do you do with now? What do you do with the now that you are currently in? I mean, if you say you failed all through school, if you flunk out of school, the system might not be very palatable for you. But what are you really doing now? And I think that's one of the things that should be put on the table. What exactly have you done before? One, what are you doing now? Two, what are your policy prescriptions? I know this kind of questions of the stanza of the national, the national anthem is also okay. It's the general knowledge, what we call, what's this knowledge called? The general knowledge that we go through. Current affairs, yeah, you should be abreast of that. You should know that. But even if you don't, there are other questions I think that should be paramount, especially if I'm to be the commissioner nominee for education. You should ask me certain questions about education. How best do you think education in this state can improve? What have you seen as the lapses that is, belittling the educational standard of this state? How do you think that can? Those are very, very productive questions. Questions like, I'm not saying current affairs in that sense might not, but they should not be the standard. They should not be the reason for discrediting someone. If you want to discredit on the platform or the premise of competence, not on the premise of how much the person can wrote something or cram something in their head. If they forget those things, figures really, people don't really, if you look at very intelligent people, it's not really about having the data. They don't have to quote it. They can say, permit me to check it. They can check and look at and make their claims. But if you say, if you cannot cram something, then you should not be, you are not competent. That's a questionable something to ask. You don't, we should have questions that okay, whatever you are coming to do, this is your job responsibility, this is your job description, these are the questions that you target what you're trying to say. If you say you want to be a commissioner for something, so how long have you been in this system? What do you know about this system? Are there failures that you think you can work on? Are there things that you think another country is doing that you're... Those are very productive questions, because eventually you get to know the mind of the person, you get to know maybe the person has... Because obviously they just got some people from sleep and say, you know what, Yemi, yeah, I want you to become the commissioner nominee for agriculture. And Yemi is a media personality. So Yemi, I know it's possible. I know you can do that. But it will take more, right? It will take more to research, to get into the know, go to the Ministry of Agriculture. What's happening? Can I get something? Before you get to the Senate chambers or the plenary at the State House, you need to get your facts. Not, no, I'm not talking about the data of 100 and something thousand is spent on. No, I'm saying the fact of, okay, how well have we done in terms of this? What are the things that are militating against agricultural development in the country? What is the state of food security in the country and in the state? Those are the things that they should really ask people, and I think that's exactly what I think they should do.
Yeah, I think you're very spot on, because I mean I want to believe that these nominees had time, ample time to prepare.
They must have been informed
before going for this particular screening. So I don't know, you didn't take your time to ask about some of the requirements that you would go there with. So I think it speaks to the level of preparedness of some of these nominees, because at the end of the day, the speaker mentioned that he's going to send this list to the governor and of course inform him about those that he confirmed and those that were not confirmed. And then he said that he would ask the governor to send a new list to replace those that were not confirmed, because he said some of them even came to, according to him, some of them, especially this woman who said, I'm a politician, I don't pay tax. She said she was just trying to make fun of the 10th assembly, to say I don't pay tax, I'm a politician, I've not been earning salary, so I don't need to pay tax. And then away from that, let's also talk about this this other one that I mentioned, this Esquire, who said according to the speaker, he is not really sure if he can do the job because he wrote WAEC twice. I mean, the likes of Wole Soyinka, he failed WAEC, quite a number of verbs. And
I think if finished with third class from the University of Ibadan.
Yeah, I'm not even sure about his degree, but I know if he wrote WAEC quite a number of times before he actually passed. So if you are to judge Wole Soyinka, I don't think you'll be anything great today. That's why I said it is possible for you to have a rough beginning. Like I always say, even at at the initial stage of your career, people might laugh you to scorn, but you have one job: to make sure that they don't laugh for long. So if this Esquire came out to say that, okay, I had a rough beginning, I was not so bright, but at this point in my life, and then quite frankly, if you listen to him, you see that, he spoke really well. So I think they should have asked him questions along what he wants to do, along that, that office that he wants to occupy. So if he cannot deliver, maybe that can be okay, because it's not really about your degree now or what you finish with now. It's about the fact that you cannot even sell yourself enough to the lawmakers now, and that's why we are not going to confirm you. But dismissing him because of a third-class degree, I don't, even in the Western world, I don't think it's applicable. Yeah. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I mean, they could have asked him better questions, along that side. And then back to this former chairman of Okrika local government, Williams, who could not recite. I don't think that should be the basis of saying, we are not going to confirm you, because if you are, even the person that asked that question, honestly, that person might not be able to recite the second stanza, and that's very true. I'm not trying to say that it's possible. It's possible that person might not be able to answer. So other questions should be asked. But now I understand where the House of Assembly is coming from now. To see that, okay, Rivers State has been through a lot in the last few years. So they just want to get it right with the people that will occupy.
They need the best hands.
Yeah, just like I mentioned, I also am an advocate of allow the best break. If you have them, if you're available, allow them occupy certain positions, because, it will always reflect in the outcome. It will always tell on the administration that, okay, the best people are handling this thing. But then let's not dismiss people because of certain
sorry, let me catch your train on that. Let me catch the train you're on that. I think one of the things I loved about this, do you know what I love? I love the fact that it was made public.
Right.
I love the fact that the session was actually televised. I love those kind of things, because oftentimes we've seen cases where it was just a closed door committee level kind of screening, and then we don't get to see. Because now we can see that this is not political, because remember, Rivers State is still in a case, well, maybe it's everything as the calm has come after the storm, but you can still tell that maybe some people say, maybe they don't like the people he's bringing in, because Amar Martins, Amar Wule, and then Semilai Fubara who gave the nomination. So it could be a political angle today, but I love the fact that it was public, so everybody gets to see for themselves. And I think, again, but another thing I would like to say, just like you mentioned, is when we have this kind of things, can we get somebody who is in the know as to those offices that are supposed to? Because I see, this is my say, Martin Samuel, even as the Speaker of the State House of Assembly in Rivers State, does not know everything about the economy, does not know everything about agriculture, for example, does not know everything about education. If we can get people who have been in the game, or who are really knowledgeable, that we have adjudged to be very intelligent, or are in that field, or have manned that field before, Yes, can we have them also when we have those kind of meetings, and then let them engage us before we engage them? Engage us in the sense that, give us, what do you think is wrong in this sector? How can we, what are the questions that we can ask this person that can make an informed opinion about her, about this position? Because Martins Amawule will probably, that's why Martins will only ask for, I'm sorry, not Martins alone, and every other lawmakers, they will ask about, current affairs, because that's quite close to their whims. They don't really need to do so much. But can you tell me how agricultural subsidy has helped some countries in the past? Can you tell me about that? Can you tell me if that can be a possibility in Rivers State? Can you tell me how some things can be improved in terms of of course, we know Rivers to be an oil producing state. How can we better that state, especially with the spillage and then all of the pollution we've had in the land? We can have someone who is a subject matter specialist speak to the House first, speak to the people, the lawmakers, and let them get informed questions about how to progress on whatever field they are putting these people in.
I think you're very spot on about that. So maybe going forward now, because I recall when ambassadors were screened, for the nation now, at some point, some of the lawmakers were saying, let them just take a bow and go.
Yeah.
And some person said, no, they can't take a bow and go. People are being killed on a daily basis. We want to know what they're bringing on board. And I think that's a very good one. So it should cut across every sector in this country, every level. That you are not just supposed to allow some persons, go, maybe because you know them. Someone even said, when the wife of the late, governor of your state was screened, I'm talking about, the wife of Ajimobi. Someone said, we know you. And I mean, what's that? Yeah, you know her. But then that's on a personal level. This is for the nation. Screen people properly, and then do not do it too much. That maybe you don't like that person and you just want that person to fail.
The person,
and so some persons I say maybe this person has beef, especially with that man that said recite second stanza of the national anthem. But I don't really want to see it that way. Any question can come, and then from my knowledge about screening of political stakeholders now, I think that question. This is not the first time that question will come up. I recall there was a time that someone was asked to recite, even at that time we didn't have the new national anthem, recite the first stanza, and the person could not. So it's a problem. I remember when we came about this old national anthem, even in secondary schools, you see students dozing off when they are reciting because they can't they can't follow. Even the one that we've been using for years, some persons cannot remember. So I think it's a fine place to leave it. Good luck to the people of Rivers State on that particular one. I want to believe that the best brains will be selected at the end of the day. Okay, it's time for weather reports this morning, and we start from Ibadan, southwest. Weather feels like 30 degrees Celsius, and later in the morning is expected to be around 30 degrees Celsius, mostly cloudy around 4%. And in the afternoon, there's a rise to 35 degrees Celsius, partly cloudy around 19%. And in the evening, it drops to 28 degrees Celsius, mostly clear around 0%. And overnight, it drops further to 26 degrees Celsius, mostly clear around 3%. And that's what we have for Ibadan this morning.
And from Ibadan, I'll take it to southwest. The weather will be cloudy across board today at 24 degrees Celsius. And in the morning, it will be at 29 degrees Celsius. Expect to be cloudy at 4% humidity. And in the afternoon, it rises to 34 degrees Celsius. Expect to be mostly cloudy as well. And in the evening, it drops to 27 degrees Celsius. Expect to be mostly clear. And the weather will remain cloudy overnight at 25 degrees Celsius with 12% humidity level in the Ekiti southwest today.
From Ekiti, we cross to Ilorin, East Kwara. Weather feels like 29 degrees Celsius, and later is expected to be around 31 degrees Celsius. Still in the morning, partly cloudy around 1%. In the afternoon, there's a sharp rise to 38 degrees Celsius, partly cloudy around 1% as well. And in the evening, it drops to 31 degrees Celsius, clear around 1%. And overnight, it drops further to 27 degrees Celsius, partly cloudy around 1%. And that's what we have for Ilorin, East Kwara this morning.
And from Ilorin, not far away, to Suleja, the largest states in the country in terms of landmass, Niger State particularly, the weather would be fair at 26 degrees Celsius, and in the morning it will be at 31 degrees Celsius, expected to be partly cloudy at 1% humidity level. And in the afternoon, it rises by 6 degrees Celsius up to 37 degrees Celsius, expected to remain partly cloudy. It remains partly cloudy in the evening at 30 degrees Celsius, although it dropped from 37 to 30. That's about 7 degrees Celsius decrease. And overnight, it drops by 3 degrees Celsius to 27 degrees Celsius to remain clear at 2% humidity in Suleja, Niger State today.
And from Suleja, we cross to Port Harcourt Rivers. Weather feels like 23 degrees Celsius this morning, and later in the morning is expected to be around 29 degrees Celsius. Cloudy around 18%, and later in the afternoon we have 31 degrees Celsius, mostly cloudy around 3%. In the evening it drops to 24 degrees Celsius, mostly cloudy around 1%. And overnight it drops further to 23 degrees Celsius, cloudy around 8%. And that's what we have for Rivers this morning.
And in Abuja, Federal Capital Territory, the weather is fair across board. So if you're traveling to Abuja, perhaps it's a cool weather. But of course, it's fair. In the morning at 30 degrees Celsius is what it starts with. It expect to be mostly cloudy. And the afternoon it rises by 7 degrees Celsius to become partly cloudy. And then the weather will remain clear in the evening at 30 degrees Celsius, dropping 7 degrees Celsius downward. And then it drops much further by 4 degrees Celsius overnight to remain clear also at 3% humidity level to 26 degrees Celsius in Abuja, Federal Capital Territory today.
And from ABJ, we cross to Maiduguri, Borno State. Weather feels like 20 degrees Celsius this morning, and later is expected to be around 33 degrees Celsius still in the morning, mostly cloudy around 0%. In the afternoon, there's a rise to 40 degrees Celsius, partly cloudy around 0%. And in the evening, it drops to 28 degrees Celsius, clear around 0%. And overnight, it drops further to 22 degrees Celsius, clear around 0%, and that's what we have from Maiduguri this morning.
And staying in the north, Kano Municipal is where I land at 21 degrees Celsius. The weather will become partly cloudy across board, and of course in the morning, 32 degrees Celsius, expected to be partly cloudy at 0% humidity level. And afternoon, it rises by 7 degrees Celsius to 39 degrees Celsius, still expected to be partly cloudy. It remains partly cloudy in the evening, dropping 10 degrees Celsius down to 29 degrees Celsius significantly. And then it remains partly cloudy and mostly clear overnight at 24 degrees Celsius after it drops by 5 degrees Celsius from 29 to 24 degrees Celsius in Kano Municipal today.
Of course, that's how far we can go this morning speaking about weather report. Right now, we take a short break, and when we come back, we take the news. Do want to follow us across our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Dominion Broadcast, and on X at Dominion Cast. We'll be right back. Please stay with us.
Live from the heart of the action. Welcome to the nerve center of Next Level Broadcasting.
This is the OB van, where the studio meets the street.
Equipped with cutting-edge cameras, crystal clear audio, real-time switching, and broadcast control, we don't just capture moments, we deliver the experience live.
Anywhere, anytime, from stadiums to red carpets, breaking news to buzzing festivals, weddings, birthdays, and all sorts of ceremonies. We bring the world to your screen in real time.
It's not just a van, it's a complete mobile production house, a command center, a broadcast beast.
This is more than a broadcast. This is the OB van difference. Live, loud, limitless.
Ready to go live? Like never before. Book the OB van today and take your event to the world. One powerful broadcast at a time.
To book, call 0705 506 1061 or 0916 101 1061. Email marketing@dominion.org.ng or visit our socials on Instagram at Dominion Broadcast.
Dominion Broadcast, your channel of choice.
Hello and welcome to Daybreak News on Dominion Television. My name is Anoluakpo Idowu. President Bola Tinubu has vowed that Nigeria will not give in to people who are causing trouble and trying to break the peace in the country. Tinubu made the vow during an interfaith iftar event held with religious and traditional leaders at the presidential villa in Abuja, assuring that Nigeria will win the fight against insecurity. The president also said Nigeria's economy has started to improve, promising he will never let people who cause trouble damage Nigeria's peace, unity, and independence. President Bola Tinubu has asked the Senate to screen and confirm Taiwo Oyedele as Minister of State for Finance, replacing Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite. The president's request contained in separate letters read during plenary by the president of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, also urged the upper chamber to confirm former Rivers South East Senator Magnus Abe as chairman of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. In the letter, Tinubu urged the Senate to consider and approve Oyedele's nomination as part of ongoing adjustments within the Federal Executive Council (FEC). Tinubu's letter was read by Akpabio, who subsequently referred the nominations to the Senate Committee on Petroleum Upstream for further legislative action. Meanwhile, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has transmitted the 2026 statutory budget of the Federal Capital Territory Administration (FCTA) to the Nigerian Senate for consideration and approval. The letter conveying the budget proposal was read on the floor of the Senate by the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, during plenary after lawmakers resumed from a 3-week recess held to allow committees to conduct budget defense sessions. In the letter, the President explained the constitutional basis for presenting the proposal to lawmakers, disclosing that the proposed spending plan is designed to stimulate socio-economic development within the Capital Territory and improve the welfare of residents. The Chief of the Air Staff, Air Marshal Sunday Aneke, has highlighted the challenges of securing Nigeria's vast territory while stressing the need to protect students in tertiary institutions. Speaking during a visit to the Tertiary Education Trust Fund headquarters in Abuja, Aneke said the Nigerian Air Force was collaborating with relevant authorities to ensure rapid response in the event of security threat to schools. His remarks come as the Executive Secretary of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, Sonny Echono, outlined steps being taken to strengthen security across universities and other higher institutions. The Air Chief also appealed for patience and appreciation from Nigerians for the sacrifices made by security personnel. The Oyo State House of Assembly, through its Public Accounts Committee (PAC), has commenced a probe on Auditor General's reports on ministries, departments and agencies (MDAs), as well as local government areas in the state, in order to ensure accountability and transparency. The consideration for the public hearing, according to the committee, will cover 3 years, 2020, 2021, 2022 for MDAs and 2 years, 2023 and 2024 for local government areas, so as to correct anomalies of past years in the spending of public funds. According to the chairman of the committee, Honorable Olushola Owolabi, the public hearing, which is expected to last 2 weeks, is being held at the caucus room of the Oyo State House of Assembly Secretariat in Ibadan. He vowed that the committee would not hesitate to refer culpable officers to the Anti-Graft Agency for further probe, assuring the established that this exercise is a legal duty and not a political move. As the Lenten season continues, Christians have been encouraged to remain steadfast in prayer and faith and to use the period to seek spiritual renewal while contributing positively to their communities. Taiwo Olanrewaju reports on the significance of the season.
As Christians across the country continue the observance of the Lenten season, clerics have continued to emphasize the spiritual significance of the period as a time for reflection, repentance, and renewed commitment to God. Prophet SMO Mustafa explained that the Lenten period is a time for sober reflection, prayer, and sacrifice, stressing that believers must draw closer to God and live lives that reflect love, humility, and righteousness.
Time of repentance. We don't just go to Lent, fasting, without thinking of repent. What we have been doing before, that we know that is not the will of God. This is the time that we think deeply and repent from our sin and turn to God. That is the meaning of Lent, not just say fasting. Number 2 is time to pray for ourselves and pray for the country, the nation. So that is the meaning of Lent. That is what Jesus did before.
Speaking of the current economic situation in the country, the cleric called on governments at all levels as well as wealthy individuals in society to extend support to the less privileged.
Let the government try to create jobs instead taking our money into another country, foreign countries. Instead of investing in Nigeria, they go to other country, foreign country, invest in there. And Nigeria now, we need investors. That is what we need in this nation. Let every one of us try, help people, contribute to their success, do something to the youths around you. If you contribute to the life of the youth, the people that need from your side, God will continue blessing you.
As the Lenten season continues, Prophet Mustafa encouraged Christians to remain steadfast in prayer and faith, urging them to use the period to seek spiritual renewal and contribute positively to their community.
And in business, Dangote Refinery has lowered petrol and diesel prices by 100 naira, bringing it down to 1,075 naira per litre from the earlier price of 1,175 naira per litre, according to the latest pricing template from the refinery. The refinery further stated that the price of PMS for coastal supply will now be set at 1,050 naira per litre, which accounts for a minor adjustment due to maritime distribution expenses. In a similar manner, the cost of diesel has been lowered to 1,430 naira per litre at the gantry, marking a reduction of 190 naira from the previous price of 1,620 naira per litre. Meanwhile, the refinery pointed out that the prices at the gantry do not include fees from the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA. And finally, in sports, Nigeria Premier Football League NPFL side legend Rabiu Ali has reiterated his desire to continue playing for Kano Pillars beyond this season, making it his 18th season with Kano Pillars. The 45-year-old midfielder has been one of the standout performers for the Sai Masugida in the current campaign, netting 7 goals in 29 appearances for Kano Pillars this season. Ali, who has now won the MPFL 4 times with Kano Pillars, expressed his desire to win more trophies with the 4-time MPFL champions. And that's about it on Daybreak News. You can visit our website on www.dominion.org.ng to watch us live and interact with us. You can also follow us across our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn at Dominion Broadcast, and X at Dominion Cast. And that's Daybreak News. I'm Anoluakpo Ido. Thank you for watching. as fuel crisis deepens, economists are calling on the government, particularly the federal government, to act now, because now is the time to act. Perhaps you would say, what should be the acting, or what should the acting be about? Exactly some of the questions on the court on the table of the president this morning. Meanwhile, so many other stories are still making the rounds, but this is the segment where we check into the print, the newspapers, stories breaking, developing, and making the rounds across the nation, Nigeria. We check the stories right here. And sometimes, if time permits, we stretch beyond the borders and the shores of Nigeria to maybe the Middle East, because that's of interest to every story that's making the rounds across the world today. And of course, this morning, I won't do this alone because I have with me in the studio, joining us live in the studio this morning is Oluwaseun Oluwole. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's always good to have you in the studio.
Thanks for having
I hope
me.
it wasn't difficult to, to buy fuel from your place.
Well, we'll talk about that.
All right. So in the course of time, of course, so many prints are with me this morning. The Punch newspaper, for example, the Nigerian Tribune. But let's just go over a few stories making the rounds. First off is I would like to take the Punch newspaper, and this is the big caption on the first Punch newspaper this morning. That's about appeal court fallout. That's about politics, PDP in question right now. And this time is PDP governors Wike camp move to reopen to open reconciliation talks. That's exactly the conversation on the Punch newspaper. As you can see this morning, warring blocs may hold peace talks soon as INEC deadline nears. That's exactly on the one side of the story. On the flip side as well, Saraki PDP chiefs plan truce. Joint caretaker committee ahead of March 31 convention. That's exactly on the other side. Now, the flip side would also mean we have double, as we say, Hydra-headed stories today. Of course, governor's camp says court judgment clears path for party reset rebuilding process. It seems to be a moment where we say there is a calm after the storm. Maybe this is exactly the situation. Perhaps not. Perhaps time will tell. Taking other stories on the Punch newspaper, as you can see, the top corner says Dangote now supplies 92% of petrol as federal government pauses imports. That is also a big one right there on the Punch newspaper. Something of interest to everybody. If you're not talking fuel, someone else is talking it on your behalf. Anyway, we must talk about it. Meanwhile, federal government weighs policy tweaks as Middle East war lingers. Maybe that's why a lot of persons are really calling on the government to act. Meanwhile, India, others rejecting Tinubu's and voice over tenure policy. Really? Anyway, that's also one of the conversations we're having this morning. There are other stories, but for want of time, we have to get into the analysis with Oluwaseun, who is going to help us unpack, unfold, uncover some of these very difficult or seemingly difficult stories on the print this morning. But first, let's talk about how you got here. Was it difficult? How much did you buy fuel the last time you bought it? And what are the projections?
Now, the fuel yesterday, as at when I bought it, it was around 1,003. To me, it shouldn't come as a surprise. But to so many people out there who don't actually understand the sign and times of what is actually happening, they will tell you, oh, but you should actually see it coming when we start having issues with the Straits of Hormuz, with Iran, Israel, US fallout. It will always affect us. Concerning oil coming out from that region, it's not only the Nigeria that is being affected. It affects them too in the US and almost every country that has to do with the Straits of Hormuz. Of course, we have our own fuel, but still importing part of it will affect it. We remember some time ago when the marketers in Nigeria have issues with Pengasang, have issues with Dangote refinery and all these things. Now, they're actually telling us Dangote might not be the sole provider of our fuel here in Nigeria. So, when it comes to that is not the sole provider, then we have to have imports. And when we start having imports, coming from that link, then something of such will happen. So, having a surge in the price of fuel shouldn't be a surprise to the enlightened ones.
Sorry, let's take it from this angle. That I like the fact that you've brought it to bear to say this is not peculiar to Nigeria. This is not an endemic situation. We have it across the board. But you know, some are asking the question: what can Nigeria do to better itself? Because now, maybe let's put it into other perspectives. I know you're an aviation expert, and I know a lot of people that are willing to travel. Okay. That would influence how much they pay for tickets and all of that. So that's also on the high. And you don't want to think about that, especially if it's in dollars. If they have to pay in dollars as well, you understand the situation, and especially with the Nigerian naira. So that's a lot of burden for people to bear. But let's look at what they call solutions journalism to say, what can the government do?
Now, last year I remember going to Lagos with a friend. And we are trying to get the CNG for his car. And someone on the other queue, PMS, was actually telling us, oh, this is a very wrong idea. This is a bad idea. This is see, this point that we are still using. You see? Now, yesterday, it came to my mind when I heard them talking about the presidency now rolling out the CNG, more CNG out
100,000 compressed natural gas conversion kits across the country.
Across the country.
Yes, that's in the news.
To ease conversion for a lot of people, commuters out there. Now, if we can do that, there are now ways for us to create more energy. Here in Ibadan, we have some people going around purchasing those solar products.
Solar panels.
Solar panels, solar products. It's not that we are actually saying we are condemning the energy sector in totality, but there should be alternatives.
So what you're professing now is diversification of energy.
Yes.
To have just more than
enough to ease our burden. We have a lot of infrastructures that will thrive on energy. And if you cut off energy, you are stopped. The work going on will be an energy stuff, economic stuff. When it goes into full force, if it's not stopped, this is day 10 or day 13 or day what of the war, and we're actually feeling it. It's not even up to a full-scale war yet that we expect. Just 3 countries involved now. What if other bigger players in the picture start coming in? So this is a time where we must learn to diversify into production of more energy outlets for the people, because there's nothing we can do without energy. Do you understand?
All right.
So that's to my own understanding, from my own perspective. So it would be a bad idea for the government right now to invest in other, and for other people now too. Maybe we will need the National Orientation Agency to let people know that it won't be a bad thing. We are not actually ruling out our own energy sector of the federal government that is not actually working. Of course, we will put our backs into it, but at the same time, let us have what we can have to say that, oh, we have backup for our energy company, our energy resources.
I think that's a valid point, because just yesterday too, Dangote Petroleum Refinery did a bit of slashing, and it was a good one that many persons have called to be. But that's not enough, right? There's so much to do about diversification of energy.
We still have a lot of commuters.
Yes.
We consume a lot in Nigeria. Basically, most of our infrastructures are power-based infrastructures. This economy will strive more if we can concentrate more on the energy sector. Without even the energy sector working, and talking about the energy sector, I mean the electricity. If it's in full force, the economy will flourish. From SMEs to MMEs, they will flourish. Even with that still crumbling, we can still see how resilient some of our SMEs and a lot of entrepreneurs are cutting round to power their mini industries.
Yeah, that's important. Now, let's get to something else that is of interest to a lot of people. Now, the federal government has commenced the evacuation of willing Nigerians in Iran. And the question that came about was when you said willing, how we have it in the news, escorting them safely across the Armenia border amid rising tensions in Middle East. That's Abike Dabiri-Erewa, who is the chairman and CEO of the Nigerians Diaspora Commission. That's NIDCOM, confirmed the operation on a post on our X account to say, yes, Nigeria is willing to get willing people out of Iran. What do you make of this?
Willing people. Let's come back to Nigeria. Our leaders need to put their backs into getting the right, how do I put it now? The enabling environment. Put it right for Nigerians. That is when you have willing.
So you mean people are not willing because they don't want to come back to this, so they prefer to...
They prefer to still stay there. At least it's not a full-blown war yet. That's the way they put it. At least it's...
but what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say a war torn or a war zone is better off a country?
I don't call it a war zone yet.
But you feel
the war zone
Iran
is perpetually it.
You feel Iran is
Iran is not
okay
a war zone
yet.
Not until recent times that we have this. It's not a war zone. Those areas, I mean to travel and trust too. Those areas are peaceful. Not until this. Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, Iraq, Baghdad, they are peaceful. Not until this. And it was Iran you attacked. And where do you think it will attack? Your military bases. Not the whole country.
But some people are going to get the brunt of that. Civilians who walk on the streets might get a hit too.
Don't walk. When you know that is happening, they don't walk near a military base.
Because I want to be sure. I want to be sure you are not encouraging people to just stay there even while all of this is going on.
No, I'm not encouraging people to stay there. I would tell you don't go to Libya. But no matter what they do, what you do, some people still go there. I keep wondering, why do you people still go? You keep going back to Libya after what's happened and the way they are treating us. But hell no, some people are bent on, let me get out of here. Now you are using the word willing Nigerians. You yourself know that some people are not willing to come back. Ask Abike Dabiri. The people, okay, here in Nigeria, we've not been throwing bombs. What has happened to our power lately? Power grid collapsing in and out without any form of insurgency or whatever. We've not been throwing bombs. And for the last time in my house, I'm using the solar power then anyway. I have not seen my lights coming on up to 24 hours in the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I'm solely dependent on solar. This morning before getting here,
I don't want to get into your
it is solar.
I don't want to get into your personal, but I could have asked if you are on band A or band B, because that probably would give you enough.
Or let me call it, I'm a bandit.
I get the point, but of course you're not a bandit, but I get the point you're making.
We are not at war. We don't have electricity. Despite that they are bombing Iran, the lights are still on. I was watching news yesterday. The lights are still on. No emergency. No siren blowing. Run for the bunkers. Israel are now running for bunkers, but despite the fact some Nigerians are still there, they are still not willing. Put things right back home. There's a Yoruba adage that says,
all right, let's stretch into politics for want of time very quickly. PDP, Nyesom Wike, governors on the PDP, Seyi Makinde, and a lot of that. There still seems to be a story that's unfolding around this thing. But what do you make? Let me get your projections. What do you make of all of this PDP crisis come 2027?
This, I think, to my own perspective, everything will be settled. Now we are having them moving towards reconciliation. It's always good to sieve, to shake things or to rattle things up once in a while. When two brothers are inside, when people of the same mothers or same father are inside, and they come out laughing. That's a very good point. That's a very good. They've not talked about the real thing that they are supposed to talk about, because if they actually hammered on it, they'll cross each other's path.
But the question now is, Mr. Oluwale, is this not too late? Elections is in a few months.
It's not. It's not late to put your house in order. It's not. They can still come to terms with a lot of things. We still have a faction there. Their differences iron out, and this can still come together. PDP is still PDP.
But what about the loss of interest in
They
people?
have to see.
Loss of interest by the people who used to support or believe in them. Because, of course, this must have created a distrust in some sense. Some have said they are following some of the people that are defecting, that they don't want to stay in the party, even as members, card-carrying members.
You can still end their trust. We still have people that are still bent on not moving, not flinching. Like Seyi Makinde, they still have his own party here, and he still have his own loyalists. Wike still has his own. Almost some of them still does. So they can still come back together. They can still work. I've seen these two people work together for some time. But maybe because of some particular interest, they couldn't, at a point in time, it was broken down. But now, if this is the interest, let us put it aside. How can we move on? During the last election, local government election of the FCT, you can still see that the PDP is still active. The PDP faction is still very, very active. So if they can still come together with that kind of zeal, they can still put things out. They can still put some few strings.
On the flip side, let's quickly talk about the opposition party, and that's the ruling party, the APC. They have 31 governors as we speak. Some have said, some have alleged that this is what do you call it now? This is a one-party state kind of ruling that is not really always good for a country. But exactly the case we have is 31 out of 36 states governors are in the APC. And that's like a multi-party contest in 2027. So what exactly do you think would be the outcome? What, in your own words and your own view and perception, what do you think is going to happen to come 2027?
We are having this number of APCs governors because of the coming election. After the coming election, subsequent
2031.
It won't be like that.
But you think this is a walkover for APC?
It's going to be a walkover. As it stands now, it's going to be a walkover.
So there's no party that might stand against them in terms of numbers?
When you, as a governor, an incumbent governor, trying to go for the term, your second term, and you are with the ruling party, what do you think will happen? You have the numbers with you, and you have the infrastructures with you. The power of the incumbency is with you. So it's a walkover for the APC.
Oh, we've seen states that have a governor, a sitting governor, whose party did not win in the state.
It might happen because everything still depends on the personality of the governors. Moving to APC because of their seat still depends on their personality. How the party people, their people in the states actually perceive them. Are they good enough to still live there? Do we still want to continue with Mr. A leading us, like what you said? So we can still have a sitting governor losing to a more stronger opposition. If that opposition is strong, if you see a very good personality in that opposition. I was telling some people 2 days ago, see, if care is not taken in your state, the opposition that we think it is not will come into being. That we don't see it coming. We have people that some are actually saying, okay, the federal might is behind such a fellow. But with what is happening, it might not work. Like what you said, it might not work.
All right, let's take this issue on insecurity. Daily Trust has it this way. It says, troops neutralize terrorists, recover arms in Sokoto. Meanwhile, Sheikh Gumi recently, I'm so sure you must have seen that. He said the federal government knows the whereabouts, name, and location of every terrorist in the country. What do you make of this?
There's no fire without a spark. For Sheikh Gumi now to be coming out to tell us this, he has always been advocate of those people up there. I wouldn't want to call him a person frolicking with them, but he has always been on their behalf, talking on their behalf. So if he says that, as the federal government, they know who these people are. He should help us tell the government of the day to pinpoint them out so we can put an end to all this brouhaha.
But do you think, let's look at his claims. Do you think his claims are valid? And if it's valid, why is the government not responding to that? Because there should have been a rebuttal or a revoking, or should we say, they should call for his revoking of his... rebuff.
I will tell you that the government, every government knows every splinter cell of every strand of terrorism in this unknown domain.
So you agree with Gumi?
I will 75% agree with him. When it comes to the issue of espionage and counter-espionage and intelligence service, I was reading this novel, The Deceiver. Don't the MI6, every one of them know who they are fighting against? They do. The main thing that you can tell me and can be the reason for attacking Iran or putting Khamenei to sleep is because of his strong belief and funding of the Hezbollah, ISIS, ISWAP, and all those strands of terrorist cells, which some of them are linked to our own Boko Haram here, which are splinter cells of those other bigger cells. So that's the only thing I can say, okay, well, good to just bad rubbish from that note, or on that note. But to me, I see it as an unjust way to take out someone, just going in, knocking off. It relates to so many other things. All so right. We actually know, they will actually know, or might actually know who the terrorists are.
All right. I mean, there's so much to talk about that. Meanwhile, there's protests in Ondo and Oyo about the rising case of kidnapping in those regions. As there was a protest along Oyo to Ondo just yesterday, and of course that's also. But for one of time, we might need to cut it right now. Thank you very much for coming up on this very show, Mr. Oluwole Oluwaseun, aviation expert and public affairs analyst. We'll now switch focus to the big story with Oluwayemi Adelakun, but that will be shortly after this break. Stay with us.
When the cost of living rises faster than the income of the people, every market store becomes a measure of the nation's economy. Across Nigeria today, the most common conversation in homes, markets, and public transport is no longer just about politics. It is about prices. From the food stores and Bodija market in Ibadan to the busy commercial hubs of Lagos and the federal capital, Abuja, Nigerians are grappling with the reality of rising cost. Reports have it that the prices of staple food, rice, gari, beans, yam, pepper and tomatoes have continued to rise sharply. Transport fares have also climbed, while small businesses say the cost of running generators, moving goods and buying raw materials have increased significantly. And in Nigeria, whenever the price of fuel goes up, it affects virtually everything: transportation, food supply, production costs, and even the price of goods in neighborhood markets. Some analysts link the rise in prices to major economic decisions in recent times, including the removal of fuel subsidy, exchange rate reforms, and the floating of the naira, rising electricity tariffs, and increasing transportation and logistics costs across the country. But the debate continues. Is this simply the reality of economic reform and inflation? Is market profiteering worsening the situation? Or are policy choices creating unintended consequences for ordinary Nigerians? Today we take a deeper look at the forces driving the rising cost of living in the country. Joining me to unpack this important issue is public affairs analyst and researcher Ignatius Ofino Eboseleme Amoluayemi Adelako, and this is the big story. Good morning, Ofino.
Good morning, Yimi. I'm delighted to be invited into this breakfast cafe called The Big Story.
I like that. And of course, your popular line, I speak truth to power. I expect you do same this morning as well.
Definitely. Speaking truth to power has always been my passionate desire. I want a greater country called Nigeria. A country that will be greater than the United States of America.
Excellent. Okay, let's start the discussion this morning. Inflation has been persistently high in recent years in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, it's not news to so many Nigerians. In the last 10, 12 years, we've seen inflation, and then we've seen the worst part of inflation. What are the biggest drivers of inflation in Nigeria?
In the first instance, what is inflation?
Okay.
Inflation can simply be defined as the persistent rise in the general price level. I repeat again, inflation can simply be defined as the persistent rise in the general price level. But there is one thing you must understand. You can never have a zero inflation economy.
Okay.
But you must strive in such a way to ensure that you have what we call a single digit inflation rate, not exceeding 5%. So when we are talking about inflation, there are different forms of inflation. We have what we call wage-induced inflation, as a result of increase in workers' wages. One. Then we have what we call cost-induced inflation, as a result of the high cost in production. When the factors of production are so high, the tendency is there for the capitalists because they want to minimize cost and maximize profit. So at the end, for them to break even, the tendency is there for the price of goods and services to increase in the goods market.
Okay.
So there are many factors responsible for inflation. Now, there is one thing that is also germane too. When you are talking about the forces of demand and supply, the invisible hand, according to Adam Smith. Okay. The forces of demand and supply will definitely determine the price of goods in the goods market. But there is a way you have to do it to ensure that the prices of goods are moderate and relatively affordable to consumers. So when we are talking about the issue of high costs of transportation, then high costs of food in Nigeria, there are many factors that are so attached to it. One of the factors that has been attached to it is the unilateral decision taken by Mr. President on the removal of the oil subsidy. So the oil subsidy was supposed to be removed in phases, not the outright removal.
But the federal government said that was the best thing to do.
Definitely. In a capitalist economy, you have to remove the oil subsidy. Do you know why the subsidy causes what we call market inefficiencies and price distortion? So, but when you are trying to practice your own capitalism, you should also remember the welfare of the people, especially the ordinary people. So in America, there is what we call food subsidy. There is also what we call healthcare subsidy. Is there? So that's the welfare policy. Even though America runs a capitalist economy, but in Nigeria today, our leaders are trying to run a capitalist economy without putting into consideration the welfare of the ordinary people. Now, let me give you an instance now. Inflation in Nigeria is high.
Okay.
The standard of living in Nigeria is low. The cost of living in Nigeria is high. The purchasing power is low. So when you are talking about the purchasing power, you are talking about the quantity or the unit of goods that 1 unit of your currency can afford in the goods market. How many quantity of goods can 1 unit or 1 naira of our own currency purchase in the goods market?
Can we trace that to the floating of naira, a policy put in place by this current administration?
You don't float your currency when you are not a producer nation.
But some economists agreed with the president to say, oh,
Nigeria is not a producer nation. We are a consumer nation. What do we produce? The natural resources are there. Are we the owner of the natural resources? No, it was nature that was so kind to us that gave us that natural resources. But when you are talking about capital goods, those goods that you produce from natural resources, you have to transform natural resources into finished goods. Let me give you an example. We have the iron ore for the production of what? Automobiles. What you do is this. You extract the iron ore, you refine it, and you process it. It becomes what? Metals. So that metals can now be fabricated and manufactured to produce what? Automobiles, whether ships, aeroplane, or cars. Then you now sell. So you make more money from finished goods than from raw materials.
Okay, Ophilo, what about the over-dependence of some Nigerians on importation, especially on goods produced outside of the country?
It's the fault of the country.
How?
This is the fault of the government. The government was supposed to introduce what we call indigenization policy. There is what we call local content. We encourage those who are actually producing in Nigeria. Let us produce what we want. Let us consume what we produce. That is how a right-thinking leader will always think. Let me give you an instance. Nigeria is 200 million citizens.
Above.
I said 200 million plus citizens. Now we have natural resources. It's an advantage to us. What the government will have to do is that you now develop your education sector. When you're talking about science and technology, you're talking about education too. It's there. You develop. How do we now transform these natural resources into finished goods for our own benefit and for export too, so that we can be able to have more dollars? You cannot print dollar in your country. The only way you can be able to generate dollar is through what we call export revenue. 1, diaspora remittances. 2, then foreign grants. That's the only way to generate, to get your own dollar. Because dollar is not your own currency. But in international market, what the currency for international market is the dollar. But there is one thing that struck my mind this morning when I was coming.
Okay.
Let's assume we are 200 million people as a country. We don't have any natural resources. We need quality healthcare delivery system. We need quality capital infrastructure. We need what we call food for our survival. We need a lot of things, security. A right-thinking government will now think, sit down. How do we provide this thing for our people? We need a stable power supply, especially if it is a country where the climate is not favorable, where we have snow. You cannot survive in a country where there is snow without power supply. That is why you see in Europe, they are always, the demand for gas is high because they need gas to warm them because of their climate.
Ophilo, you mentioned something about education, the ed sector, infrastructure, agriculture. Initially, when this administration came on board and, of course, removed the subsidy, this administration said the money will be pumped into education, electricity, infrastructure, and, of course, the ed sector. Is that obvious?
It's not obvious.
In this current administration?
It's not obvious. There is a difference between a working government and an impactful government. They removed the oil subsidy. It had a negative impact on the lives of the ordinary Nigerian. You know, I was trying to explain some things that a president will now sit down. I don't have resources, but I have citizens, 200 million plus. How do they survive? Then the government will say, what we are going to do is this. How do we find a way of importing food at a moderate cost? How do we ensure that we can also produce goods? Japan does not have iron ore, but today Japan has one of the highest fleet of automobiles in the world. That is creativity. A right leadership, the right vision is there for your country. So what I'm just trying to emphasize is this. You assume as a president, we don't have any form of natural resources and we are 200 million citizens. How do I provide a lot of things for the citizens to survive? How do I provide food for them? How do I provide automobile for them? Because they need automobiles too. How do I provide fuel? We don't have fuel. How do we ensure that we import fuel into the country at a moderate price that will not affect the ordinary citizen at a moderate cost, so that the transportation cost will not be high? That is how a right-thinking president will think. Okay. But now we have an advantage. We are having natural resources, yet Nigerians are living. I don't know what to say at this junction.
Are you saying that this whole inflation is caused majorly by the policies put in place by the government? Because some politicians and even Nigerians are calling for the return of subsidy. Because according to them, they were not supposed to remove it in the first place.
No.
Is that an option?
In a capitalist economy, definitely you have to remove subsidy. But there is one thing America have done again. There is an element of socialism in their welfare policy. And what is that element of socialism? Food subsidy. When we are talking about socialism, you are saying that the means of production is controlled by who? By the government. But when we are talking about capitalism, the means of production is controlled by what? By individuals. So that is the difference between socialism and what? And capitalism. But there's one thing you must also understand again, that greed is the basis of what? Capitalism. Those capitalists, they want to minimize costs and maximize what? Profit. That is what we call normal profits. And that is what we call abnormal profit. That abnormal profit is what? Exploitation of the consumer.
Okay, speaking about greed now, let's talk about the middlemen and of course the marketers now. Some are arguing, especially the government, quite a number of fans have come out to say that it's really not about our policies. It's about, people producing. It's about the companies, the manufacturers, and of course the traders in the market. They are the ones that try to inflate the prices, most of the time. Is that a valid point?
They have a point, but to me it's the fault of the government. Where is the price control board? We don't have anything called price control board. When we had the regional government, there was what we call the price control board. There is what we call farm gate prices. Farmers are so poor. The farmers that are producing in rural area, they are so poor. Do you know why? They are being exploited by middlemen. Farmers are not being allowed to sell to the goods market directly. So we have the middlemen. The middleman is just like a cabal, a cartel in Nigeria. That is what you see. And transportation costs is also affecting the price of goods, especially staple foods.
Is transportation not affecting the middlemen too? I mean, you calculate some of these things before you actually determine the price that you sell. Electricity is another problem. So should we blame the middlemen 100% without looking at these factors that influence their prices too?
Now, look at the issue of fuel. Our life and economy is tied to the fuel. We need fuel for our survival as an economy. But the removal of the oil subsidy was what was responsible for what? For the hike in the pump price of fuel in Nigeria. But assuming before you do that, the president will have ensured that the 4 refineries are functional before you now decide to do what? To remove the oil subsidy so that the local price will be able to stabilize. There's what we call imported inflation. Inflation that arises as a result of what? Importation of goods. Especially what we call exchange rate volatility. The exchange rate volatility. When the price of importation of goods is so high, it will affect your own local currency too. So it looks more like an imported inflation, an inflation that arises from abroad as a result of importation of goods. So there's what we call exchange rate volatility. Now, unification of the exchange rate. There was nothing wrong about the unification of the exchange rate. In Nigeria today, you go to the commercial bank, the exchange rate, we have people trading in currencies. The exchange rate in the official exchange rate is different from the exchange rate in the parallel market. Probably that was why the president now felt that there should be what called unification of the exchange rate regime. You are supposed to fix the exchange rate. During the days of Muhammadu Buhari, the exchange rate was fixed, fine, but there was the parallel market too. And we know that Bureau de change. If there is a particular region in Nigeria, they are the ones in charge of Bureau de exchange. But when Asiwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu came, he felt that there should be a unification of the exchange rate. Probably that was why, and that was what actually led to the floating of the naira.
Okay, so let's talk about, you mentioned in a few now, let's talk about monopoly. Because even Pengasan and, of course, the marketers have complained bitterly about the fact that, only Dangote refinery is working perfectly and the other refineries are moribund. Is this a way of the government contributing to inflation in this country?
It's a failure of the government. How on earth a private individual owns a private refinery that is functional? Then the 4 refineries of a whole country is dysfunctional.
What about those that are working across these refineries in the country? Because salaries are being paid. Auntie Bayo Ojulari came out to say that these refineries do not have a future. What about people who have held that position for years? People collecting salary without anything to show for it.
The same thing applies to Ajakuta Steel Complex. We have people collecting salary there. It's not the fault of the workers. They are Nigerians. You blame the government, not blame the workers that are collecting salaries.
Okay.
Workers must collect salaries. They are Nigerians. You blame the government. It's the failure of the government. It's not a private refinery. It's a public refinery owned by the good people of Nigeria. But there's one thing you must also know too. In the oil industry, we have modular refineries. There are modular refineries too. It's the failure of the government. What is the policy of government in the oil sector? In the other time, we are talking about the Petroleum Act, the Petroleum Reform Act. It was there that suggested that there must be what we call local content. There is a way we can be able to do it. And the problem with the oil sector in Nigeria is what we call the rent-sinking syndrome. Government only depend on royalty and joint ventures. The Nigerian government has joint venture with multinational. So until that refinery is working, so that was why I blame Asiwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu that the outright removal of the oil subsidy, to me, he would have done it in phases. That was where he got it wrong. There is nothing wrong with removing it, but not the outright removal. Before removing it, you will have ensured that the 4 refineries are all 3 out of the 4. We are functional, working. Then you now remove the oil subsidy, what? In phases. Then those who were culpable in the oil subsidy corruption saga, you prosecute them before the law to serve as a deterrent.
That question was not to blame the people, it was to get clarity. But then let's talk about Asiwaju that you mentioned now. Because according to him, he said that the people will feel, they will feel the struggle, they will feel the suffering for a moment, and it will get to a point where they will start feeling, the good part of removing the subsidy. At what point or what year should Nigerians, be expecting to feel the good part of removing the subsidy?
Mr. President is only being rhetorical. We don't need rhetorics. Good intention is not enough. Action-based decision. He knew that it's going to have what we call multiplier effect. The removal of the oil subsidy led to what we call inflation in Nigeria too. Hike in the cost of transportation. Hike in tuition fees. Hike in the cost of rent. Do you know that in this country, you provide everything you need? You provide your housing. You provide your food. You provide your security. You provide your roads. You provide what we call your energy. You provide power too. And the likes. So we have to blame the government the more. So government policy, to me, their policies does not actually transform the lives of the ordinary Nigerians. What the policy is actually doing is this, is increasing the level of sufferings among Nigerians.
Okay.
So when we are talking about the poverty index in Nigeria, the poverty index in Nigeria is so high. So the government must find a way. How do we reduce the poverty index? In India, you know what the Indian Prime Minister did? He introduced a policy, and at the end of the day, 5 million Indians were being lifted out of poverty. Is that not a significant figure? Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu should tell the world the number of poor Nigerians that have been lifted out of poverty. He should tell us. The number of Nigerians that are poor, that were being lifted out of poverty since 2023.
Okay, good. Let's talk about some theories now. And of course, these theories can produce practical values. Adam Smith, who wrote Wealth of Nations, in his book, argued so much that the market should flow freely without government intervention. But then John Keynes, he didn't quite agree with that. He feels that he's also an economist, that the government should actually intervene in the market forces and should not leave it solely to the forces of demand and supply. Looking at Nigeria as a country, and of course the complexities, and Nigeria is quite peculiar, which policy is best for Nigeria? Should we allow the market to just continue to run freely?
In a capitalist economy, you allow the forces of demand and supply
so
to determine the price of goods and services according to Adam Smith. But Professor John Maynard Keynes now said there must be government intervention. Do you know why he suggested?
Should be regulated.
Do you know why he asked for government intervention? It was as a result of the economic depression during the First World War and the Second World War.
The Roaring 20s. Are you talking about the Roaring 20s?
Yes.
Okay.
That was why he brought that suggestion. There was economic depression that was affecting the manufacturing sector and business firm in the United States.
That was due to the stock market crash.
Yes, that was why he brought that as an intervention, that the government must be an interventionist. That was why. Okay. But now, what the government can do is this. The government must regulate the price, especially in a socialist economy. The government determine the price, they regulate the price. But in a capitalist economy, the government intervention must not be pronounced. Must not be pronounced. You must allow the forces of demand and supply to determine the price of goods in the goods market. But there must be what we call government intervention in the area of, well, let me say, food subsidy. That was why America today, there is food subsidy in America. 3% of the American population produce the food they eat.
What about in the area of the middlemen? Of course, we mentioned the greed. Some Nigerians are talking about the greed of this middlemen.
It's the responsibility of the government. If the government wants the middlemen to be phased out in Nigeria, so be it. If they want the middlemen to be phased out of this country, no problem about it, so be it. But there's a way the government can be able to do a thing that, let me give you an instance. They banned the importation of automobiles into this country. We still have some people who are still smuggling cars. Right. Into this country. Some people do smuggle the car. It's a failure of the government, especially custom, that can compromise. When the government made a policy that there should be importation, ban on importation of certain goods, the government wants the indigenous company to grow. But is the government providing loan for this company? Are they providing loan for them? I wouldn't know. Now, sometimes you go and import car abroad. The cost of buying the car is 5 million naira. When you want to clear the same car at Apapa Wharf, you clear the car for 5 million naira. What do you expect the importer to do? The car will be sold for 15 million naira. That shows that the man bought the car for how much? 5 million naira abroad. He paid 5 million naira for clearance at the wharf. That is how much? 10 million naira. That is the cost of the car. Now, the so-called capitalists, we also want to make more profit. At the end of the day, you now want to sell the car at the rate of what? 15 million naira. That is making a profit of what? 5 million naira to break even. That is why you see the cost of imported cars, especially Tokumbo, rising in this country. Sometimes my heart bleeds. In advanced nations of the world, if you buy a car today, the next day, it has a depreciation value. Let's assume you bought a car for $5,000. In America today, $5,000. The next day, you want to resell that car. You can never sell it for $5,000 anymore. You have to sell it less than $5,000.
It's everywhere.
Because it has a depreciation value.
It's everywhere. So because
it does not apply that here in Nigeria. Okay. Rather, because of that car will increase and skyrocket. So our so-called economic policy cannot be well defined.
But it's a
theoretically.
Problem. I don't want to agree with you, because even in Nigeria, some persons, when they buy a car for maybe 5 million now, you use it for 6 months. The next time you want to sell it, you won't sell it for, up to what you actually bought it. You don't agree with that?
I disagree with you.
Really?
I disagree.
Okay, because of time now, we'll talk about it. Let's talk about the factor of this U.S., Israel, and of course Iran war. How much of these is affecting inflation? Because if you look at the price of fuel in the last few days now, I'm telling you, the bikemen, the cab drivers, they will tell you we can no longer take 500. We are taking 700 because of this price. And a lot of Nigerians are not even aware that it is because of this war, this unrest in the Middle East. And that's where we are seeing this increase, this surge in the price of fuel.
Rather sad and unfortunate again. I remember a few years ago during the COVID-19 crisis, there was what we call global recession. If care is not taken, as a result of the Iran-Israel-US war, the world itself again can experience another global recession. You know, when you are talking about the Middle East is a region that is deeply rooted in religion and history. The two major religions in the world can trace their roots back to the Middle East. We are talking about the Christian religion, we are talking about the Islamic religion. And the Middle East today is also endowed naturally with the crude oil. Venezuela happened to be the country that has the largest crude oil reserve in the world. Venezuela is in America too.
Maduro was captured recently.
Yes, but you can see what actually happened. You know, during the regime of Maduro, he was selling oil. The pump price of oil there was less than $1. 1 liter of oil. He was selling it using his own currency. So the Americans now felt that it was a conspiracy against their own form of currency. I'm not in support of America invading Venezuela, capturing their president. I'm not in support of it.
What about the invasion of it?
Now, what is presently happening in the Middle East now will never affect the American economy. Because now, the acting president of Venezuela happened to be one of the American allies. So he's going to sell fuel, crude to America. He will sell the crude to America. Iran was placed under economic sanction. US don't buy crude from Iran. They buy crude from Saudi Arabia. But the Middle East now is being engulfed with crisis. The other day, Saudi Arabia was also being hit. By who? By angry Iran, because they were expecting the Arab world to join in that war against Israel and what? United States. So there is a problem on ground. Look at the Strait of Hormuz. Happened to be one of the major energy routes in the world. That place is under siege. There is a blockage there.
So this is not the first time that something like this will happen. So who can help us? I'm talking about global politics now. If the United States will decide to invade Iran, invade other countries without thinking of the consequences, yeah, according to so many Nigerians, it's a good one. How do we curtail
the United States will tell you that they are fighting against terrorist organizations in the world. When Ayatollah Khomeini was alive, America declared Iran as the axis of evil. Though the Iranian spiritual leader then said that death to America, death to Israel. Do you understand? There was a time it was alleged that he was planning to assassinate President Donald Trump. Do you understand? So the rest is history. But for now, there is a problem on ground. The problem on ground is this. The world risks another phase of global recession. There's energy crisis in Europe. Do you want them to freeze and die?
Okay, what is the world?
They need stable power supply, and the power supply cannot function without gas.
What is the role?
So Europe depends on the Middle East for the supply of gas.
Okay.
So it may trigger revolution even in Europe. Do you know that if there is no stable power supply in Europe, the citizens in Europe will freeze and die because of their climate?
Okay, what is the role of United Nations in all of this? Because initially...
The United Nations that is being controlled by the United States.
Okay, so is there a way out of this?
It's very difficult. There is nothing Guterres can do.
Because we don't know how long this war will take now. We hear
it's going to be a prolonged war. There is going to be what called the cycle of the revenge and violence.
Some people are speculating that if care is not taken, the price of fuel might jump to 1,800, close to 2,000, depending on when.
Do you know the problem we are having in Nigeria today? Assuming our refineries were functional, we won't have enough problem. We won't have problem. We now Aliko Dangote refinery. We just complement the Nigerian 4 major refineries.
Okay.
But for now, it's so sad that our 4 refineries are not even functional. We are talking about Aliko Dangote. Aliko Dangote owns a private refinery, but he does not own the crude. It is NNPCL Limited that will supply crude to Aliko Dangote. And you know, NNPCL also depend on imported refined fuel. So there is a problem on ground. The trade war between Aliko Dangote and NNPCL Limited. Has the trade war ended?
It's a big issue, but I like the fact that we've been able to highlight the major problems. We couldn't talk about electricity and, of course, the Minister of Power, but maybe that discussion will be for another day. But we need to go this morning. Economic policies are not truly successful until ordinary people can feel relief in their daily lives. As we have heard today, the rising cost of living across Nigeria is not just an economic statistic, it is a daily reality for millions of citizens. Many analysts point to a combination of factors: the removal of fuel subsidy, exchange rate adjustment, energy tariff increase, and broader structural economic reforms. While these policies are often introduced to stabilize the economy, in the long term, their short-term effects are clearly being felt in markets and homes across the country. The critical questions going forward remain: how soon will these policies translate into economic stability? What safeguards can protect citizens from excessive price increase? And how can the government balance economic reform with the welfare of ordinary Nigerians? These are conversations that must continue as the country navigates its economic future. A big thank you to our guest Ignatius Sufino Barcelona for sharing his insight with us this morning. I'm Oluwayemi Adelakwan. This has been The Big Story. Stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, behind every economic decision are the lives of everyday Nigerians. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we move on. Please stay with us.
Live from the heart of the action. Welcome to the nerve center of Next Level Broadcasting.
This is the OB van, where the studio meets the street.
Equipped with cutting-edge cameras, crystal clear audio, real-time switching, and broadcast control, we don't just capture moments, we deliver the experience live.
Anywhere, anytime, from stadiums to red carpets, breaking news to buzzing festivals, weddings, birthdays, and all sorts of ceremonies. We bring the world to your screen in real time.
It's not just a van, it's a complete mobile production house, a command center, a broadcast beast.
This is more than a broadcast. This is the OB van difference. Live.
And of course, that's what we have right there. Thank you for staying tuned with us on Dominion Television. Daybreak Live is the program. And this time around, we're switching our focus and attention to the what we call trending, or trend watch, as it were. I wanted to say trending watch, but what's trending was watching. Anyway, it's trend watch. And this time around, the story is coming from Abuja. And it says, Wike's aide, Larry Olayinka, sends threatening message to journalists for exposing water scarcity in Abuja. Just a brief into that story, that reacting to the message, the journalist questioned whether it was meant as a threat or an attempt to intimidate her over her reporting. That's a lawyer and journalist, Adesua Giwa Osage, raised concerns about possible intimidation after receiving a message from Larry Lainka, an aide to the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, following her report on water scarcity in Abuja. You know, she shared the message allegedly sent to her by Olayinka, who serves as Wike's spokesperson and senior special assistant on media. But that's exactly the story right there for everybody to see. They said if you, according to the message that, you know, he said if you are asked to come and substantiate your claims now, human rights and beings referring to human rights activities will start making noise. You know, reacting to the message, journalists questioned whether it was meant as a threat or an attempt. But that's exactly the story, because we've seen also cases of possible intimidation by ministers, commissioners and public office holders, especially to people, to the general people, to say, because there was the case also of David Umai and another person that was a civilian, and then it erupted into something quite big.
Me, I'm not holding
a lot of 250 million. And the question again came about, what transactions did you guys do? Why are you owing someone 250 million, Minister of Works? But then many questions still on the table, yet unanswered. But this is the case now. There's a claim that Wike's aide, Olayinka, is threatening somebody who is actually a journalist, and that's why I think it concerns us a lot of times to say, sending a message to you as a journalist for exposing something. So if you have to do an investigative journalism or investigative work or report on something, and then someone comes from a quarter to say, you better be careful, or otherwise we'll do something against you, and which is not a good way to go. But I think it has happened before too. I was part of a movement, I don't want to mention some of the details, but I was part of a movement, and eventually what we discovered was that it was the government in power at the time that sent thugs to come and beat us up. I escaped through a hair's breadth. I was almost beaten. Some of my friends were beaten. Their faces were bulged because they would go punches. And those guys just came from, they had like 5 buses and they came after us. We were just protesting for the good cause of the country. Anyway, I don't want to go into this.
All right. It's really sad that we're at this point that, you know, a certain hate of a politician will decide to threaten somebody for exposing. Of course, some persons, you know, beat her up. And when the mother was shouting, that was when they stopped. And you need to see her face swollen and things like that. So how did we get to that point? You know, I mean, this person, I'm not even sure she's a journalist. She just saw that the only secondary school in this area is not something that you can be proud of. She made a video and posted it. And then she said the chairman told her that, you know, she's trying to soil his image. I mean, on the national level. So it's a problem. I don't know how we arrived at this position, and it's not even safe for you know, journalists or people who want to just talk about what is going on in the country. But if people don't complain about the situation, how are we supposed to expect a change? Because this is the problem. And then I think even apart from this, you know, the likes of, you know, David and Day, the likes of Fisayo, they always complain about, you know, getting threats, today or tomorrow. But then these people, they are hell-bent and say, we'll continue whether we get threat or not. So I don't know how we arrived at this position, and it's not good for Nigeria as a country. Recently, someone called us a country of particular concern. If we continue like this, I wonder what they will call Nigeria in the next 5 years, really.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly the... So, but let's see Nigerians' reaction. Let's see what Nigerians are saying on the social media platforms and every other platform that this has been dropped. Let's see, taking comments from that flag. It says, Steve Lowe says, is he... I cannot say that. Anyway, why is the facade more important than the reality? Why do we seem to hate our people as so much as leaders? That's coming from Iriabo.
And of course, yeah. I bet you are saying, Peter Olayinka, if anything happens to that person, you are threatening time to Putin. Oh my. Let's go to our where he's saying, who said that? Hey, people, we can be civil with our comments. Yes, some persons are pained by this, but then let's be civil. In the ocean, they say, when one allows...
So Amodu, I'll just take Amodu. Amodu says it's a pity for government officials to cover atrocities in our society. And I guess that's a good one to say. If you want to make your claims, make it within the confines of law. Don't break the law while you're trying to approach someone that is breaking the law.
Exactly. No, 2 wrongs can never correct
of course.
Something. All right. Okay, I think it's time.
Yeah, that's how much we'll take today. Thank you very much for joining us and staying tuned to Daybreak Live. This morning has been an exciting, intriguing, exhilarating moment in the studio, and of course for you viewers as well. Join us again tomorrow. My name is Anolu Akboido, and bye for now.
All right, Amoluwayemi Adelakun. Please be safe. Bye for now.
Need a professional space to bring your vision to life? Dominion Television Studios offers state-of-the-art facilities perfect for your next broadcast, commercial, corporate video, or live event. With flexible rental options, cutting-edge equipment, and a supportive team, we provide the perfect environment for high-quality productions. Unleash your creativity. For bookings, email us at marketing@dominion.org.ng. Call us on 0705 506 1061 or 0916 101 1061. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok at Dominion Broadcast and on X at DominionCast. Book your space today. Dominion Television, your channel of choice.